So Northern Europe is now included in the Roman Empire. And long term, this has really important consequences. So Caesar is now taking the Roman Empire away from this Mediterranean world.
Now in victory, Caesar can return to Rome. He has eclipsed all the other nobles, even Pompey.
After Caesar's near decade of overwhelming military success in Gaul, he wants to return to Rome to reap the rewards, to be recognized by everyone as Rome's leading man. But his rivals fear and hate him, above all because he's put them in the shadows.
In 49 BC, many Roman aristocrats insist that Caesar release his army and return home. But Caesar balks.
Caesar knows that if he were to disband his army and come to Rome, he would be murdered by his rivals who hate his success and know that Caesar can't be stopped because he's so popular. So Caesar's life was literally on the line.
Caesar and his enemies are headed for a showdown, and no one can stop it. For Caesar, leaving his men on the shores of the Rubicon and traveling on to Rome alone means complete capitulation to his enemies.
Caesar's life was literally on the line. Caesar had to cross the Rubicon River, this little stream that was a boundary between the provinces and Rome itself. When he did that, he knew that there would be a civil war, but it was that or die in disgrace.
One side of the power struggle is led by Caesar. Forged by a decade of campaigning, his army's belief in him is unshakable, its dedication absolute. The other side is led by Pompey. His army is scattered throughout Italy, and its loyalty is in doubt. Caesar's popularity, he knows, is at its height.
The population of Italy treated Caesar like a returning god, and soldiers flocked to Caesar's army. There was no opposition. Those who feared him were fleeing like a wave towards Rome, and the city became a scene of absolute tumult and panic. The people at Rome who love Caesar are partying in the streets because they can't wait for him to return.
Pompey gathers up the Roman Senate and flees to where support for him is deep and strong, Greece. It buys the great general valuable time. Months pass before Caesar can build and appropriate enough ships and supplies to follow him. By the time Caesar's troops disembark in Greece, Pompey has amassed a great army. In January 48 BC, at Pharsalia, the most important figures in Rome square off in tragic civil war. Pompey commands twice as many men as Caesar, yet Caesar's soldiers come armed with a potent weapon: confidence.
Pompey had to fight or had to surrender. That is the way that Caesar worked, and Caesar's men knew that he would always put them in a position where the chances of success were very great.
He also has a very well-trained army. You reach a certain point and the army becomes a well-oiled machine. They're not called veterans for nothing, and they become a very effective fighting force because they're so used to what they're doing.
At Pharsalia, Caesar's long years of campaigning pay off. His men utterly destroy Pompey's army. Pompey himself escapes. Caesar chases him to Egypt, but too late. In the end, the great Pompey is tricked, murdered, and beheaded by Egyptian brigands. The head is sent back to Caesar. Classical biographer Plutarch.
When Pompey's head was brought to him, Caesar refused to look at him, but he took Pompey's signet ring and grieved as he did so.
Did he really do that? It's very anecdotal, and it almost defies plausibility, but it is possible in a sense. It's possible because Pompey had been a colleague and a friend for a time. And maybe in a sense, Caesar saw what could happen to himself in the eyes of the dead Pompey.
In 46 BC, with his rivals out of the way, Caesar has the total power he has craved his entire life. Rome is his. Caesar quickly moves to rebuild the city, changes the tax laws, and establishes colonies. He becomes the first leader of Rome to conceive an empire.
Caesar essentially becomes the new state. Caesar replaces the Republic. Now, this is a great preview of what's going to happen under the emperors. But Caesar does it in such a way that he seems to disregard the traditions of the Republic. And as a result, he essentially cuts himself off and isolates himself.
Unwilling to share his rule with lesser nobles, he proclaims himself dictator for life, king of Rome in everything but the name.
The fear is if Caesar becomes a king, the rights of the people to vote, to choose, to express their opinion will be taken away from them.
Outrage over Caesar's tyranny seeps like poison through the Senate. Even Caesar's own protege, Marcus Brutus, is persuaded to betray him.
Brutus was a complex and frankly not very attractive man. Caesar had made him his close companion and promoted Brutus's career. But I think Brutus couldn't stand being second banana to Caesar, and Brutus had this romantic notion of himself as the defender of Roman liberty by leading the conspiracy against Caesar.
Finally, in 44 BC, on the Ides of March, in the name of liberty, 40 conspirators take matters into their own hands, led by Brutus. Classical biographer Suetonius.
23 dagger thrusts went home as Caesar stood there. He did not utter a sound after the first blow, though some say that when he saw Marcus Brutus about to deliver the second blow, he reproached him in Greek with, "You too, my child?"
Many of them were his friends. Some from a long time, some perhaps thought that Caesar had destroyed the Republic's most cherished tradition, that no one man can be the leader of Rome. And there was surely spite and jealousy and just human passion, and perhaps some notions that this was what freedom required.
Caesar's death spawns not a rebirth of the Republic, as the conspirators hoped, only anarchy, more violence, eventually empire.
I think, long-term, the infusion of obscene riches into Roman politics, the turning of the army into clients of the general as a patron, and the intense rivalry among the aristocrats to defeat each other instead of serving the country meant that the Republic was doomed even without the genius, the fire of Julius Caesar. It was his relative Augustus who found a way to make that work and create the Roman Empire.